bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So I teach computer programming at a community college, but before that I taught at several other colleges and a few tutoring centers as well. And some of my students tell me really colorful stories. And it really goes to show I never really hate any of these jobs, right? When I complain about bitter experiences, they're always about how they're managed, right? I can't think of a student that I really Peter dislike, even the ones who misbehave, and I'll get to a couple of those in a moment. I had just most recently, I had a student at the college. We had a lesson about probabilities. And so my student chimed in on a personal experience. When he was in high school, poker was all the rage. They would play poker in the cafeteria, and they would bet some amount of money, their allowance money, not a whole lot. But he had mentioned how he had gotten gypped and he never wanted to gamble again. What had happened was he had just started playing poker, and his career was very short-lived. And the reason was that at the cafeteria, he had a flush, but another one of the players there had a straight, and the player convinced him that the straight beats the flush and took his money. And later on, he discovered that his friend was mistaken. He naively thought that his friend was just mistaken and went to show his friend, I guess on his phone or whatever, and his friend was like, shut the fuck up, and didn't want to talk to him. And he kept his money, and he got gypped like $10, $20, and he never wanted to play poker with the rest of his friends anymore, and then he never really gambled anymore. And so I congratulated my student. I said, well, congratulations. He said, for what? I said, you kind of won all the money that you would have lost in the so many years that you didn't gamble, so congratulations. Just treat that experience as a win. You know, your friend scammed you $20, but you probably won thousands of dollars from that. And he kind of understood it after I said it that way. And so just really good rapport. I have students who sometimes misbehave. I worked at a tutoring center, and one of the students there was always screaming and it just disruptive. We had these reward points that we would give the kids that they could exchange for toys or candy. And when he would misbehave, I would threaten to take his points away. Now, my boss didn't always agree with me threatening to take his points away. You know, it's kind of funny. There's a reason that I would threaten to take his points away. It kind of was selfish of me. You see, I am autistic myself. Sometimes I get drawn down with people who misbehave like that. I start to also get egged on by that. And so by threatening to take his points away, I was kind of reminding myself not to do what he was doing. And my boss didn't really understand that. But he would misbehave, and I would tell him to get back to his work, and I would count down from 10, and I would take his reward sheet and threaten to rip it up and count down from 10. And so eventually, my boss didn't like it when I would count down from 10. So instead, I drew a rocket on the piece of paper. It was like a countdown launch, right? And so after that, drawing rockets was kind of a symbol for I'm going to take away your reward points. And so even the misbehaving students, I had good chemistry with. I had another student. I was at the tutoring center. She was doing some kind of a social studies project, asking people how old they were when they got married and the circumstances around their marriage. And so I told her, I think she was a fourth or fifth grader, I told her that, I was kind of born with my spouse, but I didn't recognize that until I was about 23 years old. And I wanted to see if she could guess what kind of marriage I'm talking about. She thought it was an arranged marriage. And when I explained the kind of marriage, I really love how the younger generation is so open-minded. She actually thought I had an official marriage with myself after I explained it, as if there was like a wedding ceremony and that there were some legal implications of that, right? I wish! I later had to tell her, I wish more people could think like you. And my favorite story of them all is I had an AP chemistry student, and he had come to the tutoring center with this really fancy periodic table that showed, among other things, pictures of the elements, most importantly, how rare they are in the Earth's crust. And I was going to show him at the time, Bitcoin was all the rage, and some people knew about precious metals as well. But I wanted to show him how platinum was rarer than gold, and at the time, half or one third the price. And silver was only 10 times more common than gold, but 1/100th. I was about to show him that. And I looked at the periodic table, I'm like, wait a minute, gold and silver aren't even all that rare compared to all the elements around them. And so I was showing my students platinum and silver, and then I noticed bismuth was only 2-3 times more common than gold, and I didn't know the price, but I knew it was way cheaper than gold because I've been to various mineral shops, and I know you can make big crystals of bismuth, and it's not like they're going for a fortune there, right? And so I told my student, look into silver and platinum, and maybe even bismuth as well. And before I knew it, I had several tons of bismuth. So, and actually, I spread the knowledge to yet another one of my students. He was studying social studies and learned that mercantilism was all about accumulating surpluses, so you could accumulate gold. I told him it's just like me. I eat really cheaply. I live with roommates just so I could stockpile bismuth. When you see mercantilism, just think about what I'm doing. And before I knew it, his mom came in and was really upset one day. His mom said that he had been saving up money to buy a car, and instead he took some of that and bought a whole box of bismuth, metal like bars, and his mom thought it was kind of silly, and said it was all my idea. And I said, well, maybe one day he could use that to buy like a Ferrari or something. And I don't work there anymore. 2 years later, had he held on to that now, it's kind of double the price, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.